My name is Kalen Vance, and this is the story of how I became something I never dreamed possible. But to understand my journey, you have to start with his. The legend of the Dark Knight. For decades, he was a ghost in the shadows of Gotham, a story we told each other to make sense of the chaos. Bruce Wayne. I knew the name, of course, everyone did. The reclusive billionaire, the ghost of an empire, but I never connected that broken old man to the myth. Not until the night my world ended. See, Gotham had changed. They call it Neo-Gotham now, all gleaming towers and digital neon, but the darkness underneath, that never left. It just got a new coat of paint. Gangs like the Smilex, dressed in garish colors, ruled the streets where common thugs once lurked. My dad, he was a good man, an engineer, advanced tech. He came home one night, his face pale, his hands shaking. He wouldn't tell me or my mom what was wrong, just said he'd seen something he shouldn't have, something at work. He told me to stay in, to look after Mom, but I was 17 and restless, and I thought I knew better. I snuck out to meet my friend, Liana. Big mistake, the biggest of my life. That's when the Smilex hit the neon-lit arcade. It was chaos. I tried to get Liana out, but we got separated in the crush of screaming bodies. I was backed into an alley, certain it was over. And then he stepped out of the darkness. Not the Batman from the stories. An old man, moving with a painful, rigid grace. Bruce Wayne. He didn't say a word. He just acted. He took down two of them with moves that seemed to hurt him as much as his targets. But his heart gave out, right there in the gutter. I had to get him home. I dragged him to that looming mansion on the hill, the empty halls echoing with the ghosts of a forgotten fortune. He was feverish, mumbling about caves and signal fires, and that's when I saw it. A real, living bat trapped in the gears of a giant antique clock. I freed it, and in doing so, I tripped a hidden mechanism. The floor slid away, and I fell into the legend. The cave was a tomb, a museum of pain and determination. The giant computer screens were dark, the trophies dusty, and in the center, under a single shaft of pale light, hung the suit. Not the sleek black armor I'd later wear, but the old one, the classic one, leather and Kevlar, scarred and stained with decades of battle. It was terrifying and beautiful. Bruce found me there. His voice was a dry rasp, filled with a fury that seemed to vibrate the very air. He didn't ask. He demanded I leave. He called me a trespasser, a foolish child playing in a graveyard. I ran. I ran all the way home, my mind reeling with impossible images. But home wasn't a sanctuary anymore. The front door was shattered. The smell of synthetic spray paint choked the air, and the police were there. Their faces grim. My mother was sobbing. The Smilex, they said. A random break-in. A tragic accident. My father was gone. The guilt was a physical weight, crushing my lungs. I should have been there. I was supposed to be there. I ran to my room, to the hidden panel in my desk where my dad stashed things he didn't want Mom to worry about. The data chip was there. I plugged it in. It wasn't random. My father had recorded proof that the new owner of Wayne Enterprises, the man who forced Bruce out, was doing something monstrous. His name was Cyrus Vex, and my dad died for knowing his secret. Rage replaced grief, a cold, sharp rage. I knew exactly where I had to go. Back to the cave, back to the old ghost. I begged him. I screamed at him. I shoved the data chip in his face. I told him about my father. He just stood there, a statue in the gloom, his eyes fixed on the empty suit. "Justice is a luxury for the young," he whispered, "and a curse for the old." He turned his back on me. He told me to bury my father and forget. But I couldn't. The ghost had given up, so the living would have to act. I went back to the cave alone. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I just needed to see it again, to prove to myself it was real. The suit was still there, suspended like a specter.
A new one next to the old, sleek, black, untouched. A prototype he never got to use. Before I even knew what I was doing, my fingers were tracing the armored plates. It felt alive. A low hum greeted my touch. It was madness. It was the only thing that made sense. I put it on. The systems woke up with a silent surge, the heads-up display painting the world in shades of tactical green. I felt stronger, faster, angry. I knew where Vex's head of security, a mountain of a man named Clamp, would be. I found him in a derelict factory by the docks, overseeing the transfer of Vex's contraband tech. I wasn't Batman. I was a kid in a high-tech suit, fueled by pure, undirected fury. I dropped down, and the fight was chaos. I was winning, I think, through sheer shock and the suit's enhancements. Then a security alert blared. I was compromised. And then he was there. Bruce. Not in a suit, in a heavy overcoat, his face a mask of cold disappointment. He didn't lift a finger to help. Instead, his voice crackled in my ear from a comms system I didn't know I had. The suit has a biometric lock, my biometrics, and a remote shutdown. My body locked up. The armor became my coffin. Clamp advanced, a cruel smile on his face. I was helpless. Bruce's voice was a razor in my ear. There's a ventilation shaft 10 feet to your left. The access panel is weak. He was guiding me, sarcastically, coldly, but he was guiding me. I broke free, stumbled into the shaft, and fled. Later, in the cave, the confrontation was electric. I threw his own past in his face. You had a chance to stop the man who killed your parents. I never got that chance. Don't take mine away from me. The silence that followed was heavier than any armor. He looked from me to the suit to a dusty portrait of his own parents. He saw his own reflection in my eyes. Not a hero, just an angry, grieving boy. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. The suit is a tool, not a weapon. You will train, you will listen, or this ends before it begins. The ghost had found a reason to haunt the world again.
Cyrus Vex's secret was a horror. Under the guise of clean energy, he was developing a chemical agent that could target and disintegrate organic matter. A silent, invisible weapon. My father's data led us to a shipment leaving Gotham Harbor. That was my first real mission. My heart was a drum solo in my chest. Bruce's voice was a constant, calm stream in my ear, correcting my stance, predicting enemy movements. I wasn't a fighter. I was a student, and the city was my final exam. I intercepted the shipment. I fought Clamp on the deck of a cargo ship in the pouring rain. It was brutal, messy. He was stronger, but I was faster, and I had a cause. In the end, it was the unstable cargo that finished it. A container of the vile chemical ruptured. Clamp fell into the swirling, toxic mess. I watched him sink, expecting to feel triumph. I felt only a hollow cold. I had avenged my father. So why did I feel so empty? Bruce's lesson was immediate. Vengeance is a fire. It burns the one who holds it tightest. We thought it was over, but we were wrong. Cyrus Vex, exposed and desperate, subjected himself to an experimental treatment to counteract his own poison. It went wrong, horribly wrong. The man became a living specter of radiation. His skin glowed with a sickly green light, his body shedding lethal energy. He called himself Blight. He wasn't a crime lord anymore. He was a walking catastrophe, and he blamed the new shadow in Gotham for his condition. My first villain wasn't a man with a plan. He was an accident of science, a tragedy fueled by greed,
and he was determined to take the whole city down with him. I had stopped a weapon. Now I had to contain a disaster. The stakes were no longer about my past. They were about everyone's future.
Balancing this life, it's impossible. Liana, my friend, started to become something more. She was light and laughter, everything the night wasn't, and I kept leaving her in the dark, literally. Dates cut short by police scanners, conversations interrupted by the buzzing of a silent alarm from the cave. The disappointment in her eyes was a wound that never healed. "You're not here, Kaylin. You're always somewhere else." She was right, I was. In the middle of this, a new threat emerged, the Court of Cards, a family of high-tech thieves, each with a playing card motif. They were slick, professional, and unlike the Smilex, they had a frightening discipline. During a heist at the Neo-Gotham Museum, I faced them. Their leader, the king, fought with a cruel, elegant precision. I was outmatched, forced to retreat. Bruised and frustrated, I went to a quiet rooftop to think, and she was there, a girl with eyes that held their own storms. Her name was Elara. She said she saw the fight, said she was a transient soul, a performer moving from city to city with her family's troupe. She understood a life of secrets. We talked for hours, about loneliness, about the weight of other people's expectations. For a moment, I wasn't the guy who let Liana down or the kid playing dress-up in a batsuit. I was just Kaylin. There was a connection, sharp and real. It was a dangerous distraction, and I knew it. But after the darkness of the cave and the violence of the night, her presence felt like a glimpse of sunrise. Bruce saw the shift in me immediately. Focus is your armor. Distraction is the bullet that finds the gap. I didn't listen. I followed the thrill of being seen, just for me. And that's when I discovered the terrible truth. Elara wasn't just a performer. I tracked a Court of Cards signal after another heist, and it led straight to her doorstep. She stood there, not in casual clothes, but in a sleek, diamond-patterned suit. She was the 10, the daughter of the king. The girl I'd shared my secrets with was the very enemy I was hunting. The betrayal wasn't just professional. It felt like a theft of my own heart.
The city was under a new kind of attack. Good people, upstanding citizens were committing bizarre crimes, then claiming they had no memory of it. They swore they saw things, terrifying visions that forced them to act. The police called it a collective psychosis. Bruce saw a pattern, a weapon targeting the mind. My first direct encounter was at a socialite's party. The host, a dignified woman, suddenly screamed, clawing at her own jewelry as if it were a nest of scorpions. In the panic, a figure moved with unnatural calm, plucking the discarded jewels from the floor. He wore a mask with spiraling, mesmerizing lenses. The spellbinder. I gave chase, but the world around me began to melt. The corridor stretched into an endless void. My father's voice called out to me from the darkness, accusing me. It felt so real. I barely escaped. The next day, the hallucinations followed me. Whispers in empty rooms, figures in the corner of my eye. My school counselor, a kindly man named Mr. Belasco, suggested it was grief compounded by stress. He was so understanding, so helpful. That's what made the revelation so chilling. We traced a stolen neural modulator to a nondescript warehouse. Inside, we found the lair, and there, calibrating his hypnotic lenses, was Mr. Belasco, the spellbinder. His motive wasn't wealth or power. It was bitter, twisted justice. "I spent my life listening to the problems of the privileged," his voice echoed, filtered through his mask. "Their petty dramas, paid for by the labor of people like me. Now they pay me directly. Their fear is my currency." He turned his lenses on me, and the cave itself seemed to twist into a nightmare of giant, screeching bats. I was fighting my own brain, but Bruce had trained me for this. The mind lies, the body knows truth. Trust your muscle memory.
Trust the suit's diagnostics. Trust the facts over the feeling. I closed my eyes against the illusions and fought blind, guided by radar pings and the memory of the floor plan. When I finally ripped the mask from his face, I didn't see a monster. I saw a tired, broken man who'd let his resentment consume him. It was a victory, but it left a cold fear in my gut. The most dangerous cages aren't made of iron. They're built from your own thoughts. Bruce's past was a gallery of ghosts, and one of the most formidable was a woman known as Shade. A master of light-bending technology, she could become virtually invisible. She'd been cryogenically imprisoned decades ago after a catastrophic heist, but someone let her out. Her return was marked by a series of impossible thefts, items taken from secure vaults with no signs of entry. It was like fighting a rumor. I'd hear a whisper of movement, feel a shift in the air, and then the alarms would sound. She was always 3 steps ahead, a phantom mocking my tangible strength. The break came from an unlikely source, a low-level janitor at the storage facility, a man named Arlo. He was the one who freed her, not for money or power, but out of a misguided, lonely infatuation. He'd talked to her frozen form for years, sharing his secrets. Now she held that over him, forcing him to be her eyes and ears in the city. I found Arlo, terrified and trapped. He was my way in. With his help, I set a trap. But Shade was a legend for a reason. She turned the trap back on me, capturing me and luring Bruce out with a taunting message. To my horror, the old man suited up in one of his ancient, unpowered suits. He was going to fight a ghost from his past with a heart that could give out at any moment. The battle was a brutal lesson. Bruce couldn't match her speed or tech. He fought with sheer stubborn will, using tactics and terrain she'd forgotten. He was a chess master, playing against a lightning storm. In the end, it was Arlo's guilt that changed the game. He couldn't bear to see his idol destroyed. He created a diversion, a massive light flare that disrupted Shade's systems, making her solid, if only for a moment. It was all the opening we needed. Watching Bruce stand over a defeated foe, breathing in ragged, painful gasps, I understood the true cost of this legacy. It wasn't about the suit. It was about the will to get back up, no matter how many times you were knocked down, even when your body screamed at you to stop. With Blight still at large, a new public face rose for Vex Industries, Paxton, Cyrus Vex's son. Smooth, corporate, and seemingly eager to clean up his father's mess. He even reached out, offering a truce. He claimed he wanted to help bring his father to justice for the good of the city and the company. Bruce was deeply suspicious. Snakes shed their skin, not their nature, he warned. But the public believed Paxton. The media painted him as a reforming prince. He gave me a lead. Blight was hiding in an abandoned subterranean lab, a relic from Gotham's past. It felt too easy. The lab was a death trap, a crumbling complex rigged to flood, and Paxton wasn't there to help. He was there to bury the evidence, which included both his father and the new Batman. 2 problems, 1 stone, his voice sneered over the comms before he cut the feed. The water rose, a chilling torrent in the pitch black. Blight emerged from the shadows, his radioactive form casting a hellish green glow on the rushing water. He was a creature of pure, unstable rage now. The fight was a desperate 3-way struggle in the flooding chamber. I was fighting the son's machines, the father's madness, and the rising tide. In the end, Blight's own power was his undoing. In a blast of fury, he destabilized the chamber's core support. As the room collapsed, he was swept into a deep underwater chasm, his light swallowed by the dark. Paxton escaped to the surface, the picture of concerned regret. A tragic accident, he told the cameras, his face a mask of sorrow. We lost them both. I emerged from the wreckage alone, watching his press conference on a cracked view screen. He had won. He had the company, the public sympathy, and no monstrous father to embarrass him. And he knew my secret. The most dangerous enemy isn't the monster in the dark. It's the one who stands in the light, smiling as he lies to your face. The war had just changed battlegrounds.
The call came from a man I'd only seen in history files. The Superman. He'd been watching. He came to the cave, a figure of impossible presence, and made an astounding offer. A place in the Justice League. The legacy of the Bat, he said, belonged among the world's protectors. Bruce was silent, leaving the choice to me. I was in awe. How could I say no? The Watchtower was a cathedral in space, filled with legends, and they hated me. To them, I was a kid in a Halloween costume, sullying a symbol they revered. I was given a simple surveillance mission, monitor the members for signs of a suspected traitor in their ranks. It was a test, and I failed spectacularly. When one of their own, the mighty Warhawk, appeared to be vaporized by a missile strike right before my eyes, I was the only witness, and I was the new guy, the outsider. The suspicion was a physical force in the room. I was accused, confronted, and nearly attacked. I had to flee my own allies. Back in the cave, Bruce analyzed my suit's footage. His face turned to stone. The missile's ignition source, the spectral signature, its Kryptonian, heat vision. Superman. The traitor was Superman himself. The world tilted. Bruce gave me a small, lead-lined case from a vault I never knew existed. He gave this to me years ago, a gesture of ultimate trust. Kryptonite. Use it only if there is no other path. Confronting the League with the evidence fractured them. Some called it a forgery. A fight broke out, and in the chaos, the truth erupted. It wasn't Superman, not really. An alien parasite, a psychic leech, had attached itself to him years ago, slowly consuming his will. The Warhawk that died was a drone. The real heroes had been investigating from the shadows. I'd been a pawn, a piece of misdirection. We fought the parasitic hive, a nightmare of clinging psychic tendrils. In the end, they offered me a permanent spot. I looked at their faces, at the mistrust still lingering behind their eyes, and I thought of the dark, honest streets of Gotham. My city needs a shadow, I told them, not a spotlight. I went home. I finally understood what Bruce had been trying to tell me. This wasn't about glory. It was about a promise to one city, made in the dark, where symbols mattered more than superpowers.
It began with a bite. A Smilex ganger, more frenzied than usual, got a lucky shot in, his neon-dyed teeth breaking the suit's seal on my arm. The wound burned, but it was the after-effects that terrified me, a creeping, irrational giddiness. I'd find myself laughing at nothing, seeing colors as too bright, sounds as too sharp. I was losing my grip, and Liana saw it. At a concert, I became disoriented, confused, talking to strangers as if I knew them. The fear in her eyes was the final straw. She walked away, for good this time. The loss was a different kind of pain, sharp and clean. But a greater horror was awakening. The Smilex had new leadership, a voice from the past, crackling with static and madness on every pirate frequency, a laugh I knew only from Bruce's oldest, most classified files. The Joker. He was dead. Bruce swore he was dead, yet here he was, orchestrating chaos with a brilliance that was terrifying. He targeted Bruce directly, hitting the manor with a new insidious toxin, a laughing gas that attacked the nervous system. I found the old man on the floor of his study, his body racked with painful, hysterical convulsions, a smile etched on his face by agony. I barely got the antidote into him in time. Bruce, pale and trembling, pointed me to the one person who knew the full story, Commissioner Barbara Gordon. Her tale was a ghost story, Years ago, the Joker had captured the second Robin, a young man named Tim Drake. He didn't just torture him, he tried to remake him, to break him and rebuild him as a sick successor, Joker Jr. Batman saved him, but the scars ran deeper than anyone knew. The Joker had implanted a microchip in Tim's brain, a sleeper agent carrying the madman's consciousness. It had taken decades to activate, to overwrite the man Tim had become. The Joker wasn't back from the dead, he was a digital ghost, hijacking a life. Finding Tim Drake was finding the Joker wearing a friend's face. The final battle wasn't in a warehouse or a tower, it was in the satellite arrays above Gotham, where the Joker planned to broadcast his madness on every screen, to gift the city with eternal screaming laughter. He knew all of Batman's old moves, Bruce's patterns. He anticipated everything the original would do. So I didn't try to be Bruce. I talked. I needled him. I acted like the teenager he sneered at me for being. I asked him if his jokes were recycled, if his shtick was as old as he was. I made it personal, not a battle of legends, but a petty, bitter argument. And it worked. He got angry, truly, creatively angry at me, not the shadow of the bat. In his rage, he made a mistake, a single exploitable flaw in the satellite's alignment, one I'd learned about from my father's engineering manuals, not from a crime-fighting database. I didn't beat the Joker with a punch. I beat him with a physics equation. The system overloaded, purging the digital ghost in a cascade of data. Tim Drake was freed, left with the memories of 2 lives. In the quiet aftermath, in the cave, Bruce didn't say, "Well done." He simply looked at the suit, then at me. He placed a hand on my shoulder. The weight of it was greater than any armor. "The city is yours, Kalen," his voice rough with emotion. "The mantle is yours, not because I give it, but because you have earned it, on your terms." I looked into the darkness of the cave, no longer a trespasser in a tomb, but a guardian of a legacy, my legacy. The story of Batman was no longer a tale about the past, it was a promise for the future, and my name was the first word of its newest chapter.